One thing you said is that you back then you spoke 5 languages. How many languages do you speak now?
6.5, I guess.
6.5. What languages? So English, Hebrew, Russian, Japanese,
Arabic.
4. Arabic, okay.
And the half would be half Spanish I just started and half Ukrainian, which I can understand 70% but speak like 30%.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to consider that. but 5 languages, reading, speaking, listening, all the skills, I guess.
I never feel more incompetent than when I meet somebody who speaks like more than 3 languages.
I know. It's one thing that I hate about America. That
I can speak
we
one
learn
and a
like
half. I speak half
that we learn
Spanish.
English, yeah. And Spanish, it's so funny because Spanish should be easy for Americans to learn because there's, so much underlying between the two. But yeah, I'm just like, I'm over here. I'm like, fuck, I feel stupid talking.
Okay, so you speak a million languages. You have a million degrees. Where did the oil and gas part come into play? Like, how did?
No, not even oil and gas. Like,
or the data, the software.
the startup.
There's so much still that we need to get to.
Yeah, well, the fun part is that since I was working ever since I was 9 and running the family budget, I don't know how, probably God's help, but I started saving without letting anyone know because I didn't have to. I was running the budget. And when I got out of the army and got, some benefits that you get along with your service or when you discharged, 2006 was the year I got out of the army. And 2006, we had a little incident, what we call the Second Lebanese War. So missiles were coming, tens of them a day from Lebanon on the northern side of Israel, where my house is, that got hit, by the way, by a missile. Thankfully, we weren't there. And a lot of people were flooding. They were like taking their kids and some belongings they had into their car and moving to Tel Aviv, central Israel, or the south part. And they were selling their apartments and their homes for 25% of their worth. Now, I've been saving since I was 9. So I took all that money and bought 5 apartments, renovated them myself. Don't be fooled by the nails I have now. And this was a hobby of mine. What happens when you knock down this wall? And get some furniture. And within a year, I started making profit out of it. And after 4 years, I sold it for like 1,200% profit.
Awesome.
That's how I got myself out of poverty, really. Collecting the rent and then selling because, again, God's help, my town turned to be one of the 2 most sought after places. So the valuation of the places I got was really higher. Made my first $1 million and then started investing into startups. And I don't know if you guys heard about the Israeli innovation.
I've heard a lot about the startup scene in Israel is supposed to be second to only Silicon Valley from what I hear.
Yeah,
I was Silicon Valley of Europe.
I've been meaning to ask about that, and I wanted to talk about that because I don't think a lot of people are aware that Israel has a very budding startup scene. And I mean, we've had several reach out to be on the podcast, and so I'd love to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I guess Israel had no choice to be innovative. It's Israel is only 1 or 2 years old, and within very few years as of its establishment in 1948, surrounded by, let's say, only enemies and, having nothing but swamps around the country. And after World War II, a lot of immigrants and survivors of the Holocaust came to Israel to rebuild themselves. So this population had no choice but to either build a country or lose. Yeah. And that's why I think one of the reasons why Israel is so innovative until this very day. It's just you have no choice. You have no allies around you and either you or them, So that's how it all started, in my humble opinion. In addition to that, the army service, which is mandatory. So it does teach you, or your whole life, you're trained that this is your place, this is what you need to protect, and you need to grow. There's no room for you to just, sit back and relax. You need to make a life for yourself. No one else will make it for you. So that was the approach, and that's what I was absorbing while growing up. So that's why the military service was really significant to me, and I was preparing for that, knowing that, hey, I want to serve and make it a very impactful service, and I want to learn, and this is the approach. So we constantly also Jewish studies, or like, I think Israelis, when we're in school or just in general, we're actually encouraged to not go with the flow or not follow the trend. I mean, we're encouraged to ask questions. We're encouraged to, I won't say disobey, but to counter what our teachers say, or not dispute, but I would say discuss or ask why or how to make it better. We
like
are
that.
trained not to accept things as because, you know. So that's another thing I think that Israelis are encouraged to do, and I think I still have it. So when I came to the US, I realized that I'm very direct. So I always say, hey, I'm not aggressive. I'm not impolite. I'm just Israeli. So because, you know, that's a cultural thing. We say what's on our mind. We argue. We would haggle. We would, you know, try to get things differently because this is how we're raised.
Yeah.
And this is a huge part of the Israeli startup scene. And if you heard of Waze, the GPS app,
Yeah.
Israeli.
Oh,
app
is it
that
really?
was
I didn't
sold
know
to
that.
Google. I
Oh,
know.
cool.
The USB flash drive, the email actually was invented in Israel, the @.
That's
and
wild.
cherry tomatoes. And there's like so many other inventions. And if you ever had a laptop with an Intel Inside sticker, that's from Israel. That's Ashkelon in Israel, I think, or
That's crazy.
Southern side.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and many others. Wix.com, building website in
Yeah.
Israeli. Monday.com, an Israeli
know that.
startup.
We've used Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you look at the founders' names, Israeli, and I can give you so many other examples. People just, I guess, don't know it, and maybe Israelis do not really push the Israeli side of their startup ahead.
Yeah.
It's about the technology. It's about the innovation. We either want to make things better or to find solutions to problems that exist and need solutions.
Yeah.
How much do you think, wasn't Adam Newman, wasn't he Israeli?
Oh, he is.
Do you
Yeah.
do you
We work,
do you,
yeah.
do you think he pulled the Israeli card and was able to like sell the vision?
I don't know which
Too
cards
much?
he pulled.
pulled the right
We
cards
work
for
is a
himself.
weird story. I mean, I met him and I know his sister too, but no comment about
no
WeWork. I mean,
Yeah, so it's interesting because I didn't know, and like even if you were to tell me that Monday.com was an Israeli company, I would have guessed that was from Silicon Valley. And so it's interesting that, you know, that isn't promoted more from like a marketing standpoint for Israel, right? It's like, hey, these are Israeli products and people that are building them. So it's interesting because, you know, if you look at Silicon Valley, that's almost the opposite. You know, Silicon Valley wants you to know that Silicon Valley made that and it came from there, right? So I find that interesting. But you remember that one startup that wants to come on the podcast, the drone, and they got that automated drone that has its own garage and they can.
Oh man, we wanted to get them on for a long time.
They're from Israel, and yeah, they have.
who's that? I'll arrange it.
I can't.
I can't think of the name.
I can't think of the name off the top of my head,
They're
but
gonna kill us.
yeah, no, so I think they have an office in Houston, but they're headquartered in Israel. And anyways, it's funny because Jake and I used to have some stripper wells up in Oklahoma, and we always said, hey, it'd be great if you just had this drone that came out of this little garage, and you know, every day it would just take a quick video and send it to you in a GIF. That way you could see what was going on your
Like
on
a
your
Roomba,
wells.
but a drone.
Yeah.
Like Roombas go and plug themselves back in. Why can't a drone come out flat? Take
Yeah.
a GIF like you said, so it's a small image.
Take a look.
Go back in the garage. Let the door shut.
Anyways, they
You
built
know?
this, and I just thought it was cool as hell. And
I think I know who you're talking about.
at the time, I thought it was interesting that they came from Israel, but then when I really started digging in, I was like, Israel has a ton of technology coming out of there, so it's good.
Especially drones.
Yeah. So, okay, now, man, I don't think I've ever taken as many notes as I have today. Like on page 2
It's
of
a
notes.
fascinating story so
Yeah.
far.
Do you have a book? Yeah, I was gonna say you should have a
I'm
book.
writing one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it because this is just all.
Side note,
insane
I just
stuff.
started Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, this morning.
What is it?
Fantastic. It's Green Lights. He took a diary for 42 years
Oh, nice.
and he went back and went out into the desert for 52 days in solitude and came out with a book.
Have you seen Silicon Valley?
I love that show.
So last time someone went to the desert to be alone, got stuck in the bathroom. Remember?
Oh yeah. I thought you were going to say that I look like TJ Miller, and I was
Yeah,
like,
Oh.
yeah, you do look like TJ Miller.